Great. Thank you, Jane. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. As Jane mentioned, my name is Michael Johnson, or MJ, as a lot of my friends and colleagues call me. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about how you can elevate OTM through Redwood's Rating API. And then, some other topics we'll discuss are around promoting connectedness in the supply chain as a whole. And really what that means and how we're all moving towards, a world with more open networks that will allow for higher levels of collaboration between our organizations, and really what sort of value creation that brings to the supply chain. Just as a quick introduction to everyone on the call, my career in supply chain started 15 years ago at Strive Logistics. And since then, I've had really the opportunity to work across every area of the brokerage. And I've spent the last 11 years leading our strategy, operations, and technology teams before Strive Logistics was acquired by Redwood in early 2019. And so at Redwood, in my current role as the EVP of strategy, I spend most of my time interfacing between our business, our operations, our strategy, and our engineering teams, working through how we can advance our strategic and technology initiatives. And really my strong focus is on how we can grow our digital freight brokerage. And brokerage is the rating API. So excited to be here and thank you all again. There we go. So we're going to cover the following topics today, and we're going to start with a look at the fragmentation that exists in the supply chain across both freight and technology. And then we're going to take a look at some of the lessons we've learned over the past year and a half, and specifically some takeaways from 2020 and how really last year has accelerated what we believe is the need and demand for a more connected supply chain and more connected technology solutions. I'll then move on and give you a year-to-date update of what 2021 has looked like, as well as a forecast for the rest of the year and some of the strategies that we're seeing both our shipper and carrier partners embrace to navigate what has certainly been a market full of uncertainties. And then finally, we'll talk about what's required to solve some of the freight technology disconnect. What are some of the new digital freight tech offerings out there? And specifically, around the rating API, what are some great use cases that OTM shippers and users can embrace to elevate their operations today? Before I dive in, I came across this stat a few months ago, and I've been socializing it with my friends and my colleagues. It was from a recent Gartner study, and it said that according to a recent poll, 68% of companies in the supply chain space are making digital supply chain planning their highest priority for digital investment. And so I think that helps validate the conversation we're having today. And I think as we look around us, we're seeing cloud-based solutions, APIs, data science, automation, analytics, and so many other technologies starting to mature into our space. So it's exciting to think about what the next phase of transformation looks like for our industries, and really what I think will be an abundance of opportunities that they'll unlock for all of us. Over the past year, trends in remote work and how technology has enabled us, in my belief, will only accelerate how we share ideas and collaborate and then operationalize them. So certainly an exciting time to be in the space. When we talk about freight and technology fragmentation, it's important to take a look at how the industry got here. So if you look at the evolution of logistics over the past 40 years, there's a pretty clear picture of how fragmentation has emerged in the transportation industry, and not just across carriers, but across 3PLs, shippers, and technology. But it really all started with the carrier community after deregulation in 1980. In fact, if you look at the number of motor carriers on the road between 1980 and after deregulation to 1990, over 1 million new carriers entered the market. So that's what really started, the fragmentation on the carrier side. But then again, there was fragmentation that was created after C.H. Robinson acquired American backhaulers in the late 1990s. And I think what that did was it created this new wave of 3PLs that were born, just, really adding fragmentation to the 3PL space. And until that point, and even in the early 2000s, there were only a handful of technology solutions available. If you fast forward to 2010, when some of the new cloud-based technology started to emerge and there were lower development costs, it paved the way for a proliferation of just new lightweight technology solutions meant to solve specific problems for our industry. And really, it hasn't slowed down. Over the past 10 years, there has been an explosion of new technology for our industry. And really, where we are today is it's gotten to the point where all of these new solutions are now starting to become the problem. So the next evolution I see in the cycle, and from where we are now in 2021 and over the next 10 years, is about connecting all of the system disparity that exists, all of the different technology systems, so that we can have end-to-end interoperability across technology providers. It's exciting because the topic we're discussing today is about just that, promoting interoperability between REDWOOD'S Rating API and the entire OTM shipper network, and the solutions and the benefits that provides. And so really, the goal is about harmonizing technology interoperability, connecting systems so there's less disparity, and then looking at ways to leverage our data across systems to unlock value to businesses and to the supply chain. So where are we now? So we kind of just went through, there's more choices. The number of technology solutions and providers is of abundance, and this is going to continue to grow. And as the number of solutions grows, so will the number of disparate systems we're all using. I think compounding that issue is the number of new custom work streams that are being designed within these solutions for businesses to streamline their operations. So pulling together the solution is challenging. And right now, we're at this intersection of fragmentation across the shipper community, the carrier community, and really the technology provider community. And it's a trend that's only going to accelerate in the marketplace. So we need to bridge that gap. We need to work towards unified planning, technology, visibility, and partner collaboration. And in my mind, a move towards open network planning and real-time data sharing and execution models. And so there's a lot of that disparity that exists today. And we'll cover some of the ways we can start to bridge that and promote some connectedness, and what some of the results and solutions have looked like for clients embracing our rating API. Looking across the industry, variability is our new normal. I think, between the complexity of goods, the lack of standardization that exists in the industry, and really the volatility we're seeing right now between supply and demand, these are all issues that are exacerbating problems we need to solve. And variability is really one of the key reasons our industry is hard to disrupt, and it's hard to design a one-size-fits-all solution for all of the network participants. If you look at Uber, it's one of the reasons Uber has had a difficult time disrupting our industry, the same way they disrupted passenger transportation, because the problems are different. And so on that point, variability in supply chain networks is also difficult to disrupt because you can't induce supply the same way you can with passenger transportation. It's a lot different because truck drivers require a CDL. They're also traveling hundreds of miles. And this is a big difference to solving problems at a local or passenger delivery level. The intricacy of our shipping networks and variable nature means that our status quo of one-dimensional planning is not going to unlock future value for the supply chain. I think collaboration across our shipping networks and really aggregating capacity network insights is going to be critical to moving us past the 50% carrier utilization mark. And when I talk about one-dimensional capacity, one-dimensional supply chain planning, I'm really referring to how RFPs are traditionally used and how routing guides need to evolve, which I'll talk to shortly here. And then finally, there's just an ever-changing consumer demand landscape. Consumer demands today, they're changing faster than ever before. If we look at e-commerce just as an example, e-commerce represented $792 billion of consumption in 2020. And this was a 100% increase from where we were in 2015. It's because consumers are more impatient than ever. How many of us on the call will choose one product over another because it has same-day shipping or next-day shipping? Or taking that example a step further, how many people on the call won't order a product from Amazon if it doesn't have free shipping or it doesn't come in 2 days? I think that's a perfect example of how consumption and how consumer demands are changing supply chain, because businesses that will want to stay relevant have to realize these changes in consumer demand and adjust their supply chain accordingly. And if that doesn't highlight the role consumption and consumer demands is playing, there are 150 million members on Amazon Prime today in the US alone. That's up 300% in just the past 4 years. So almost half of the US is paying for an Amazon Prime membership, and it's because they expect what they want to buy today. And then lastly, supply chains are going global. They said enables this, but Alibaba, eBay, and countless others are opening up commerce across countries globally. And so now you can go on your phone or on the computer, and with the click of a button, any of us can order products direct from an OEM, from China, from India, and so many other countries across the globe. And so with all of these things considered, the supply chains that are going to thrive over the next decade, they'll have to employ digital strategies, leverage data and analytics, and they're going to operate flexible supply chain platforms that can respond to changes in consumption and supply and demand volatility and other unexpected supply chain shocks. And so what did we learn over the past year? Well, first, the problems of the past are still present. I think the sharp spike we observed that disrupted supply was unlike we've seen before. Routing guides failed. And as we'll see in a few slides later, tender rejections in the market reached levels never seen before. And this is just further evidence of how the traditional one-dimensional execution model of strictly using routing guides for transportation planning failed last year. 2020 accelerated the need for technology. I sort of opened with that thought, but we're seeing it every day at Redwood. We're getting more interest from our shipper community in products like our real-time API. Shippers can augment their routing guide, and they can quickly and confidently navigate some of the ebbs and flows in their network, and they can also streamline their operations. And in a few slides, we're going to go through the various ways we're hearing that shippers are using rating API technology. And so in whole, access to real-time data and spend insights is starting to transform the industry and starting to transform the decades-long process of contracted capacity. It's enabling supply chain leaders to rethink their supply chain strategy in order to control costs, in order to ensure routing guide compliance, and in order to establish a more mutually beneficial relationship with their carrier base. I think this is going to continue. There's going to be new innovation and technology that enables more flexible carrier and shipper contracts in the future. And the popularity of more frequent pricing events, which we've seen accelerate since the middle of last year, is only going to continue, but I think it'll grow and eventually evolve into more dynamic rate execution. In my belief, contracted rates in the future, they're going to be anchored to market demand events so that they can have dynamic adjustments up or down based on mutually agreed upon market indicators. By moving in this direction, it will encourage more routing guide compliance so that during periods of volatility, shippers don't abandon their carrier contracts and carriers don't abandon their shipper contracts. This will strengthen the relationship between shippers, carriers, logistics providers. And so in whole, by pushing the supply chain towards more durable and flexible contracts, it will be a net positive for all parties involved. And ultimately, I believe it'll help move us in the direction of higher and longer term network and fleet utilization, which the industry needs. This slide really highlights the dramatic shift in demand rather, that occurred between April and May last year. And if you look at the start of 2020, around the March timeframe was when there was a run up of people going to their grocery stores and loading up on paper towels and TP. But soon after that, most states closed operations. A lot of manufacturing sites went down. And so you had a dramatic drop in demand from the market. And what that led to was the steepest drop off in rates paid to carriers that the industry's ever seen. And that lasted all the way through around mid-May. And when the rates fell below the operating costs for carriers in the market, a lot of drivers left the market. Compounding that, a lot of drivers left for fear of getting sick last year. And then compounding that further, a lot of our driver schools shut down or were suspended, creating a backlog of driver eligibility and new hiring once demand rebounded. So if you fast forward past that time frame, around the July or August period in 2020, states began to reopen, manufacturing came back online, stimulus money started flowing into the economy, and we saw the steepest rise in rates that the market's ever seen. And what made this situation so bad was that the structural routing guides that were used to manage transportation were so fractured that both shippers and carriers have had to operate at elevated levels in the spot market, which is not an ideal scenario for optimal transportation execution. This is just another view of some of what we discussed, the run up last, call it March and April, and then really what tender rejections have looked like since the summertime last year. And what's unique about what's happened is really how high tender rejections have remained. And that's been driven by strong consumer demand. It's been driven by the driver shortage from those drivers that left the market last year and didn't return. And then structurally, it's been driven by transportation networks that need to be reset. And many of them need to be rebid to create a more stable network for both shippers and carriers and compliance on the routing guide. Overall, 2020 showed us that being disconnected is really the Achilles heel for organizations and for supply chain companies. And it's costing us all time and money. And so just like we saw from the last slide, as market volatility and tender rejections have disrupted the transportation planning strategies that shippers have employed. And so the biggest innovation through 2020 to date has been connecting each other. And we've done that through tools like Zoom, like Teams, like WebEx, and many of us were able to operate from home in a remote environment through that connectedness. The next part of the cycle, the next big opportunity is then connecting our systems so that we can elevate how we work together, how we share data, and how we all streamline operations. Just looking ahead to 2021, and really just based on some of the lessons we've shared from 2020, the 5 themes and goals that we're hearing from our shipper and carrier partners that are our focus this year are the following. First and foremost, ROI. So companies want to know what technology strategies are going to deliver the biggest short and long-term ROI for their business and keep their business models competitive. Automation. How are organizations leveraging automation to streamline workflows and optimize their business so that employees can focus on relationships and focus on higher level problem solving? Flexibility. Supply chain execution strategies need to be flexible to both market impacts and for demand planning. Again, last year highlighted what not having a flexible transportation strategy can do for your business. Visibility. And really, when I talk about visibility, I don't mean just capacity visibility or truck visibility, but really this is about data visibility. It's estimated today that 73% of all data goes unused by organizations. So capturing the data is step one, but then doing something with the data is step two. And then finally, people. Organizations that want to stay competitive, attract high-end talent, they're going to empower their employees and they're going to enable them with technology. And so technology is not meant to replace great operators of businesses. It's meant to support them, enable them, and really allow the people to transform the business with technology, not the other way around. And so we can look at some of the transformational investment strategies we're seeing in the market for 2021. And specifically, what are some of these strategies that are being employed by companies to improve their digital fitness in the industry? First, what is the market telling us so far, and what's driving companies towards digitization and digitalization of their business? Well, one, the US economy is well on its way to a V-shaped recovery. And according to JP Morgan, they expect the GDP of the US to be on a path above our pre-crisis trajectory. So not only have we rebounded, but we're advancing on GDP. And you can see that on the bottom right in this chart from what's happened with truck loadings. And that's only accelerating as consumption, especially for consumer goods, has accelerated. And what happened last year was spending shifted from services and went in products. That is still here today. And again, between now and the back half of 2021, we expect that truck loading forecast to accelerate. And some of the factors driving all of the demand that's expected to hit are the fact that we have historically low inventories. There's also there's been a shift in supply chain models. More shipping models are operating at the regional level to keep up with next day and same day consumer expectations. There's been a trend in urbanization. As remote work has caught on and more employees have found success working from their home, there's been a shift to people moving into the suburbs and more remote areas. And in fact, a poll that Wells Fargo conducted that supports this suggested that 37% of millennials plan to leave their cities within the next year. And then finally, there's the trillions of dollars of government stimulus flowing right back into consumers' pockets and back into the economy. That's providing a big boost for consumption and for the growth that we're seeing. And so here are a few of the strategies that we're seeing our customer and our carrier partners deploy in 2021. First and foremost, all strategies that we hear our shipper and carrier partners discussing are typically all data-led. They're all, businesses are all eager to use their own data and make better decisions with it and deliver better outcomes with that. And we're seeing more organizations try to elevate their carrier and customer experience through digitization. So how do you invest in technology to strengthen the relationships that you have with customer and carrier and vendor partners? We're seeing tools like digital freight brokerage technology, visibility, and other methods of connecting with each other as huge sources of investment. And finally, driving system connectedness within and across organizations is going to be paramount to the future of successful companies in the supply chain. I'll take a pause and just say, imagine a world where all of us were using systems that had the same interoperability as the Microsoft product suite. It would streamline so much work with one another. Next, we're seeing business leaders make significant investments in the digital maturity of their core operating systems and looking towards how they can modernize their technology stack for future success. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we're seeing organizations really start to look at the benefits of advancing their analytics capabilities. And to date, in the maturity cycle, I put the industry somewhere between descriptive and predictive. Companies in the supply chain first need to harness their own data. Again, sharing that stat, 73% of data within companies is not being captured. And so first we need to harness that data to unlock value. But really, the exponential value for the supply chain is going to happen when predictive and prescriptive analytics can provide recommendations not just across one business, but across multiple networks, releasing the siloed data vaults that exist in the market today. I believe unlocking that value will provide the most significant network lift or lift rather in network, in operational, in our driver utilization that we've ever seen. A great example and some more validation of how companies are just starting to gain access to their data has been the meteoric rise of Snowflake. Snowflake is a relatively new technology that businesses are leaning into in order to centralize how they capture data and then use that data to guide and better forecast what will happen. So how do we solve the freight tech disconnect? This is a good representation of what connectivity in the supply chain looks like today. And so solving this challenge in a highly fragmented industry that is producing technology solutions as fragmented as the market itself is tough. And what's missing is this binding agent that can bring all of this system disparity together with technical prowess, with vertical expertise, and with process excellence. Some of the major areas these new solutions are coming into solve are the limited visibility we have and the communication between businesses, solving the static pricing issue and the weaknesses that model has to volatility in the supply chain. And then finally, securing fast capacity and flexible capacity when businesses need it most. So Redwood is actively investing in solving this problem, in creating this binding agent for all members of the supply chain. And we're working on building the ecosystem that all businesses can leverage to unite each other. I think this next slide helps illustrate the one-to-many integration layer that we're building for the supply chain community to harness so that we can all quickly integrate and connect to thousands of additional trading partners quickly. This Redwood Connect integration framework is going to allow tech teams to repurpose their integration work. And we've partnered and integrated to some of the largest tier 1 TMS providers in the country. Namely, OTM is a big part of that ecosystem for us. And we're already starting to leverage the power of those integrations and the way we can now connect more systems into big platform providers, into tier 1 providers in the market like OTM. We also want to connect warehouse management systems. We are connecting warehouse management systems. We're connecting order management systems, ERPs, Gartner-rated tracking platforms, and more. And so the vision is, how do we facilitate connectivity to all systems within the supply chain and then enable value creation for the parties that are leveraging the Redwood Connect framework and create value to all parties who now can share data and leverage process automation across the entire ecosystem of connectivity. Within just the brokerage, some of the ways internally we're leveraging Redwood Connect include delivering instant quoting and booking through our rating API, automating our freight workflows, introducing dynamic procurement execution, and freight matching, all of which are saving our carrier partners and our shipper partners time and money. So we covered some of what the Redwood approach was, but now we're going to go take the next few slides to go a little deeper. And just a great total addressable market forecast that was put out by FreightWaves. But I think what this does is really highlights where growth is expected to be. If you look at the total freight brokerage market in 2021, we're estimated to be roughly an $89 billion market segment. But the digital freight brokerage portion of that is expected to grow in 2021 from $14 billion to $89 billion in just 7 years. That highlights and validates the opportunity and really the role that technology is going to play in executing transportation strategies. And I think if you look, while that growth, that massive meteoric growth is occurring across the digital freight brokerage industry, the traditional freight brokerage industry is also expected to grow. And so this segment and this category of digitizing the supply chain is not taking market share from one area and moving it to the other. It's growing in parallel. And so it's just a really exciting time, again, to be here. And frankly, for all of us, hopefully, to play a role in the digitization of the supply chain over the next 10 years. Redwood's approach to building this bridge between logistics and technology is really rested on 3 of our core strengths. First, we're an open market, an open provider to the market. And so our approach is to be open from a connectivity and a technology perspective. Second, our logistics experience positions us uniquely compared to other organizations. Redwood is an expert across the board at all modes, at all services, and really has a strong amount of strength with physical and digital network design. And so not only are we building these solutions, but we're also using the solutions that we build. And so we're practicing what we preach, and we're customers of our own product. And then finally, the platform we're building is meant to deliver optionality. And so subscribers can have access to leverage the entire platform, or they can have a la carte access based on what their network needs are. And so what are some of these digital solutions that are being powered by Redwood Connect? TMS platform connectivity. So specific to OTM, this is meant to deliver value upstream through integration time and materials, but also downstream through some of the plug and play connectivity it enables and some of the process automation that can be realized by companies. And so a great example of how this is working on our Connect platform is how we've integrated to OTM to provide shippers on the OTM platform with on-demand rating and with guaranteed capacity. And the best part, and really what sets OTM in a class of its own, is the configuration optionality that shippers and planners have who are using the OTM platform. Our API connectivity, it's delivering value to customers through both tracking and rating visibility. And so being able to provide real-time truckload rates, temperature control rates, flatbed rates, and guaranteed capacity, that used to be a solution only for the LTL industry. Over the next few years, I think what the industry will see is that becomes the status quo. And so clients that are operating mature TMS platforms for planning, such as OTM, they're going to be the first to realize all of the benefits from these new solutions. Dynamic routing and pricing. We're using our matching, our pricing, and our ranking algorithms to operationalize Redwood's private network of capacity that has over 100,000 trucks in it. And so we're trying to better serve our customers through the scale we've built and through our own carrier relationships and the insights we have, instead of commoditizing ourselves as marketplace capacity. And then lastly, capacity as a service is really, it's a newer concept, but Redwood Connect is going to allow us to repurpose and commercialize our entire digital freight brokerage model as a service to shippers. So it's an exciting new area that I'll be eager to share more on very soon. Platform connectivity, we've covered this in some detail, but the platform connectivity, as I mentioned, from Redwood the industry and to bring network disparity and technology solutions together. And I think this illustration is a really neat view of how this should look. I think a better view would be if this was three-dimensional, because essentially what we're trying to build and what we have been building for years is a platform that powers a network of networks. And so we want to promote this solution to our carriers, our customers, our partners, and our competitors. A neutral one-to-many framework like this is going to power the industry forward, and it will unlock tremendous potential for how we're all working together in a more efficient supply chain of the future. And then API connectivity. We want plug-and-play access to the largest providers in the market. That includes tracking providers. We want to offer and deliver plug-and-play connectivity for our rating solution, so that we can deliver not just LTL rates, but any mode can be delivered in real time to our partners. And then finally, capacity. Our goal is to continue building a private capacity marketplace that we can offer shippers. And so as a shipper, and when you're selecting a digital freight brokerage, it's so important to understand what the capacity strategy and scale is. I believe that partnering with digital freight brokerages that can offer unique capacity and have built their own relationships and liquidity of capacity is a much more competitive solution than subscribing to digital freight brokerages that operate their digital freight brokerage across public marketplaces of capacity or load boards. That is not a competitive advantage today. And so specifically, when we talk about what are the use cases for rating API in the supply chain, and really the rating API embedded within the OTM solution, the connection we've built through Redwood Connect, here are some of the 4 use cases that we're seeing a lot of our shippers operate. First, our clients are using the rating API to quickly and easily compare rates. So there's no easier solution in the market than getting a real-time rate during the period of transportation planning. In addition, a lot of our shippers are using the rating API for flexible capacity. So if they do have a routing guide failure, or they have additional freight on a lane they need capacity for, they can quickly and confidently get the capacity they need and respond to any changing market conditions or consumption changes. shippers are using the rating API today to avoid paying premiums. Because the rating API can provide a rate nested within your existing routing guide, transportation planners and operators of the OTM platform can instantly benchmark how their contract rates compare above or below the market prices at the time. And so this is a really strong way to get a benchmark of where your contracts stand against what market rates are. So if your contracts are below market rates, you may want to negotiate higher contracted rates to preserve network and routing guide durability, and vice versa. If our instant rating API is providing below market rates that are much farther below your contracted lanes, you may want to use that as insider leverage to renegotiate a lower contracted rate on that lane. And then finally, streamlining operations. We hear this from nearly every shipper we talk to, but really it's a focus point for Redwood as well, is with system connectivity and a rating API delivering real-time quotes, both sides don't need the operational horsepower to send emails and make phone calls and potentially have a truck through different channels. Since we're connected and embedded directly within the OTM platform, we're streamlining the rate solicitation process and the way the capacity and carrier selection process works today. And so this slide, it's really designed to be a quick overview of how this all works, but it's really broken into 3 steps. First, a shipper can, operating the OTM platform, they can decide how their configuration is set up, but it really all starts when the TMS triggers the shipment to be quoted by the rating API. The rating API from Redwood delivers a bookable rate back within a second. And that is backed by 100% acceptance. And so in the matter of seconds, a transportation planner can look at their routing guide rates, but they can also look at what the market rate is. A bookable market rate that they can use. And as I mentioned earlier, what makes OTM unique and flexible for shippers is that there's multiple configuration options that a shipper can choose based on their supply strategy. One option is failed to plan. So when orders fail to plan, that can initiate the request for rating a rate back from the rating API. There's also the waterfall tender configuration option, so that your routing guide can always trigger a quote and a rate back during any tender event and during any routing decision. And another avenue is when there's no resources. So if your shipment reaches no resources or max retenders, we can configure the workflow to enable the rating API to get a rate from Redwood. So there's quite a bit of flexibility when deploying this solution, and specifically in the OTM platform. Just another view of how it looks and what the screens look like within OTM. But as you can see, the real-time rate provided, it falls directly into the routing options. And that's, again, because we can return this rate inside 1 second. It happens almost instantly. And this is what gives shippers a good rate benchmark to their contracted pricing, and a real rate they can execute against if they experience routing guide failures or need flexible capacity. And so where we are today, Redwood is really amongst only a handful of brokerages in the market that have built this new rating API capability. And I think what sets us apart compared to some of the newer digital freight brokerages is really our scale. We have over 20 years of experience, and with that, the relationships we've built on both the carrier and the customer side over 2 decades. We're also a one-of-a-kind business in the market today. We have billions of dollars of our own historical brokerage spend, but we also have experience on the managed freight side. And our team is actively managing billions of dollars of freight spend on an annual basis. And then finally, as we discussed, we are heavily invested in our Redwood Connect and our platform services division. Those were specifically designed to bring the supply chain community closer, so that we can promote interoperability and promote more efficient planning and execution. And so since we're coming close to time, I'm not going to run through each of these case studies, but at the highest levels, these are real examples of material savings that we have provided to some of our customers that are leveraging the Redwood Connect platform. And so again, our teams are focused on supply chain transformation, and all of our clients are using and leveraging Redwood Connect. And almost all of our clients are also using a combination of the traditional services we provide, as well as the digital services within the Redwood business. And so just to run through the summary, organizations are frustrated today with some of their transformation investments and the associated ROI. And we've covered how freight technology solutions, they have become more abundant, but none of them have delivered an easy button into today's supply chain. In addition to that, a lot of the technology models are becoming more complex, or they're becoming not affordable for the market and too expensive to support on a long-term basis. Connectivity is the problem, but it's also the solution. And it's the solution that Redwood's focused on solving through Redwood Connect and our broader platform as a service solution. And then finally, our open platform approach delivers that optionality, profitability, and control. And so in whole, I think businesses today, they're looking for agility. They want confidence in their strategy, and they want data to support their decisions. They also want end-to-end execution. Supply chains and shippers we are talking to are looking for digital freight technology that is tied together every part of the process, from quote to tender, carrier selection, visibility, all the way through invoicing. All of this should be anchored to relationship-centric operations teams. These teams should focus on working through exception management and helping customers and carriers solve higher-level problems. Digital freight technology today, it's not meant to displace our supply chain experts. It's instead designed to elevate the problems they solve. It's designed to give them more time back so that they can invest in relationships and invest in deeper collaboration with their carrier, shipper, and vendor partners in the space. So we don't have questions scheduled for this webinar, but I encourage any of you to please reach out to me on LinkedIn or through email if you have any questions. I really appreciate everyone joining today. I'm looking forward to more of these conversations as the industry works together and we all start working towards building the supply chain of the future. So thank you again for joining. And again, please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn with any questions or comments, and really appreciate the time. Thank you.